years talking about engagement in science literacy and what does it mean. There's a lot out there. I mean, this has been discussed.
Well, one thing that we know is a component of science literacy.
Wait, I think we're missing a point back there.
Sciences,
We've got a,
and not just
speaker.
our own. What we take for granted about biology as physicists is part of our science literacy.
I do believe that there are science literacy goals and statements out there. I was emailing something to David right now that's around environmental ed. You know, that there's a state plan in Minnesota for environmental ed that's been used around the country. There's state plans for science education where they define, science literacy as an informed citizen who is environmentally literate, understands the scientific systems that support life on this planet, and promote sustainable lifestyles for the people of the planet. Something
I think I failed that.
Yeah, well, but then that same literacy document goes on to say, what do K through 12 students need to know to be able to do this? What do the media need to know to be able to do this? What do, all these things that, and those are basic things of Newton's laws and the concepts of ecosystems and things like that, that honestly are teachable to any layperson.
Those
in the
are
public.
facts, and
Yes.
we're trying to make the point that science literacy is not knowing Newton's laws or knowing their equal.
I think Bo and Casey nailed it a few minutes ago.
Yeah,
I would agree.
I think that's it.
It's a
Yes.
different thing. We're
Yeah.
talking about a different thing when we're talking about school.
Could I also
Yeah,
just
definitely.
suggest, I think Bo's idea of doing surveys is fantastic, but I think there should be 2 surveys. Because we have 2 goals. There's the urgency of getting more people who are going to have careers in science. There's also the goals of just educating and bringing science into the broader culture. And I think those 2 surveys will be asking very different sorts of questions. And I don't think we should conflate the 2. We want to ask people what sort of contact they've had with outreach programs and things, etc., because we're interested to see how much that sends people toward becoming scientists. But we also want to know about the people who aren't. We want to contact people who aren't scientists and ask them those same questions.
Right,
we ask
absolutely.
just the scientists, we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle.
I agree.
Another thing that's really interesting that you can do that I've sort of found out by accident is to find out that point at which the person in the general public dropped out and decided they hated science.
Yeah.
I mean, I've written a lot about women in science. I remember one little essay I wrote in the New York Times a million years ago. I got 500 letters from women. It was about some of the barriers that people faced, some of them subtle, some of them not so subtle. And the letters pinpointed the exact moment, the exact professor, the exact thing that somebody said to them that caused them to say, it's not for me. It's not just women. I hear this from people all the time. Yeah, well, it was this course, or it was some snide comment that somebody made to them. So that would be what not to do. I don't know if that's a serious suggestion or not, but it's, people start off loving science. We know that. Children love science. I remember Mr. Wizard, actually Don Herbert, who was a good friend for a long time. Just a great guy, probably created more scientists than anybody I can imagine. And he could take kids on that show up to age 10. Actually, the age started going down with puberty, because something then would happen that would squelch what was already there. Because it's not like we're creating something. We want to know, what is that? How does that work? What is that up in the sky? How did we get here? We kill it somehow. So it might be instructive to know that as well.
Is science literacy broadly defined being curious about the world in which you live?
I think so. And thinking that you can actually ask questions.
And that you can ask questions, and that there may be, and if you've asked the right question, nobody knows the answer, but most questions you will ask, there is an answer out there which may or may not be on Wikipedia, et cetera, but you could,
And there's a way to do it. There's a way to ask those questions and to actually get the information. Yeah.
The National Science Education Standards have a defined scientific literacy definition, and it is copyrighted by the National Academy of Sciences. Courtesy of the National Academy Press in Washington, D.C. I can read it before I go on, but it's all the things we're talking about. A
Yeah.
scientific literate person can ask, find, or determine answers to questions derived from curiosity about everyday experiences. It goes on, and there's multiple sense in there. But the thing is that scientific literacy and literacy in environmental education as well always involves the element that I think exactly what we're talking about. That the definition of literacy now involves action by the person. It steps outside of the scope of knowledge, and that I just know these things, that I can now take action, informed decision making. And that's what Paul, I think, really did hit on, that we're talking about engagement as the tool, as the critical link that's being missed right now to get that literacy achieved, because engagement will then imply a deeper connection that the person can make those decisions with because of a feeling or a response or a commitment to it, as opposed to simply having the knowledge. I need to be able to make the decision because of a more of an affective learning that I've experienced relative to the subject matter.
And we haven't mentioned math at all. Am I allowed to bring up mathematics as a part of
Keep
this?
bringing up biology, so.
Well, I mean, there's certain things in terms of being, it's one of my favorite quotes from Al Bartlett, the worst failing of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. But there are other things from math which are essential to this, ideas of correlation and cause. I mean, just basic ideas of how things are related, of what is statistically significant. You wouldn't have to do it with a statistics course, but just to get some notion that numbers can actually help us see things that we can't see with our human perception would be very useful, especially in
And very
having
hard.
budgets, millions.
Someone was reminding me recently that one of the differences between us and the Chinese is that your average, let's say, college graduate in this country is proud to say, well, I really couldn't understand calculus. And that in China, if you want to be part of the up-and-coming elite, if you want to say that you are educated, of course you know calculus. And if you don't know it, you cannot expect to advance in the society.
I'm thinking about really simple things that, every journalist, for example, should know. And in our school, I was talking with one of our professors who said, oh, my students hate math. I said, well, what are you teaching them? I'm teaching them multiple regression analysis. I said, how about, things that they can use immediately that help them see through bullshit, okay? Because that's what they need to know. And some of these very simple tools are mathematical, and they're simple, and they don't even have to be calculus. They're just ways of sorting out.
And one of the things I think we have to somewhat frame and market these things differently. The culture is damaged in terms of certain words, switch people off.
Yeah.
And those things you're talking about, we perhaps have to stop calling them mathematics and call them something else, just to sneak in.
Absolutely.
So people realize people are doing this, and then you go, do you realize you're now doing mathematics? And they go,
Right.
You
You
sort
go
of-
critical thinking, that's...
I think that's actually a very
Yeah.
important point, because the kind of statistical
Right.
thinking
Right.
that you're talking about is really critical for people being able to read the New York Times or USA Today when they talk about somebody did a study and there were 10 individuals that they looked
know.
at.
I know.
I mean,
Right.
everybody that reads that should know that that's a real problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And-
But if you say it's math, like you just suggest,
They're
that's...
shut down.
It's shut down,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they're hilarious polls. I mean, especially political polls, but other things that show, well, Obama's winning. He's ahead by 2 points, but the margin of error is 3 points. But they never go back and say, which means.
Which means we shouldn't be doing this news segment tonight.
Exactly. It's a story. I mean, that's pretty simple stuff that everybody can really use. And correlation and cause is another, huge one.
Yeah, that's a
So,
hard one.
AIDS causes, public libraries cause AIDS. That's pretty easy to prove. Statistics. Anyway. Does anybody, we have all these people out there, or has everybody said what they wanted to say? Are there any outstanding, or do we just
I think we're hungry. It's the attention issue now.
Yeah, I think the attention issue is really important too.
Well, thank you, panel. Thank you all very much. It's been a great workshop. Thanks to everyone who's here.
And to thank
Thanks,
you,
Rory.
yay.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.